Hi, I'm Theo Stocker and I've come to the Dusseldorf Boat Show in Germany. I'm going to have a look now at the Elan Impression 43, which is a brand new boat. It's quite a big, bold step for Elan because her predecessor was incredibly successful and had a production run of nearly 20 years. Originally the 434, that hull later became the 45 and the 45.1, but this is a completely new hull. The partnership with Humphreys Yacht Design that designed that boat has clearly been very successful, and this boat has also been designed by Humphreys Yacht Design. A few things that they've done. They've massively increased volume inside the boat, as all boat builders are doing these days, but they've actually succeeded in doing so whilst making the hull slightly narrower, albeit that the beam is taken all the way aft to give a really powerful hull shape. She's got twin rudders, which we'll have a look at later, and that really increases the grip on the water and should make this a really fun boat to sail. They've also made it an easier boat to sail by moving the mast aft. It's not stepped at the moment, but that gives more space for a self-tacking jib, which is really easy to handle. So luckily at the boat show, we've got the designers here, Tom and Rob Humphreys of Humphreys Yacht Design. So I'm going to grab Tom Humphreys just to talk to us a little bit about the boat, the concept, and how they've arrived with the hull and the boat that they have done.
Can you tell me a little bit about it? I think it's the update of the 343, which has been around for 20 years.
434 as it initially launched, and then it's had a few sort of guises over the years. But it was 434. So coming up on nearly 20 years or so since that.
And that's one that Humphreys Yacht Design drew in the first place.
Yes, yeah. Well, we've had this long association with Elan now, and I think it's 29 years since before my time. That was my father Rob designed the 295, which I think was what sort of kicked off the journey. Okay, yeah. But it's branched out into a few different lines. So the Impression line was one that came out in sort of the early 2000s, and it was very much more, very much cruising and charter boat oriented. So it kind of distinguished it a little bit more from the sort of performance line, and now that which is now the E line and the GT range as well. So it sort of sits out as very much a dedicated cruising yacht.
Okay, and how much is this a brand new hull, completely new boat, or to what extent is it an evolution of the 434?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely an evolution because the 434 has been and the whole Impression line's been hugely successful. So I think we had Balazs, who heads the Elan interior design team, saying it was one that almost everyone was a little bit nervous about touching, given the success that the original 434s had over the years. But it's been a long time. We've thought about it a lot. Over the years, as a boat, we've personally done a lot of sailing.
So your family owned the 434.
A 434, and so we love it and got very used to it. But this gave us a complete fresh chance to kind of revisit everything. Working very closely with the Elan in-house team, and it's just given us a chance to completely refresh the thinking and so there's some there's been a lot of sort of fine-tuning and things like that, but ultimately quite a different difference in hull form when you look at it. And
so what are the headline things? What are the big changes that you've made?
So I mean, best thing I guess is to compare it to the original 434, which this model is ultimately replacing, and we're a little bit smaller and shorter in terms of hull length, but with now a plumb bow and different stern treatment, we're much longer on the waterline, and particularly when heeled. And that in itself is a good kind of metric of performance. So it certainly helped enhance things from the performance side of things, and it does help as well give that sensation of almost of a bigger boat in a seaway. So small things like that. The major difference again, you'll see the twin rudders, and we were very early adopters of twin rudders with our cruising yacht designs, and then with the Elan 310, I think was the first kind of our production yachts that we brought that onto, which was again early 2000s or sort of mid 2005ish, and just really using the benefits of what extra kind of control it gives you, and so really we built on that, and And going with the twin rudders allowed us to carry the beam a lot further aft, and
that gives you more form stability.
So much more form stability, and byproduct as well is we've got you compare the aft cabins of the 43 with the old 434, and you'll see much bigger proportions now in these aft cabins. So you get some knock-on benefits in terms of a cruising, greater accommodation volume. But in terms of performance, that form stability has been useful and allowed us to increase the rig size a little bit, which has also helped us make the transition from big overlapping headsails to non-overlappers. So I think a blade, a self-tacking jib is standard
much easier to handle
these boats. You
notice in the cockpit here that there aren't there's space for winches there, but it's not got loads of winches, loads of lines everywhere, which I guess is geared up and self-tacking.
So that is standard. I mean, there is the option to go with a bigger blade jib as well, and obviously all set out for your primaries if you go that route. But the focus it has very much been on this boat is for a couple or a very family and or a less experienced charter charterers. So really ease of use is one of the big driving factors.
And one thing you mentioned earlier was about you actually made the boat narrower, which is quite unusual these days. Boats are getting wider and wider. So why have you taken the overall beam narrower, and how have you done that with increasing performance?
It's sort of just juggling all these features. One thing we have, you're extending the water lines, you're picking up extra wetted area in that respect. So really for us it was about just trying to reduce waterline beam a little bit when you're upright, just so that we're not increasing our wetted area. And then as a function of this more beamy and the extending the beam further aft, you start to pick up all that form stability with heel. So as you power up, a nice increment of form stability comes into it. So ultimately that we have more stability, but we're a little different sort of shape on the waterline essentially.
So she's going to be a slippery boat, slightly quicker than the 434. Crucially, your family own a 434. Are you going to upgrade to the Impression 43?
Well, would love to at some point maybe. But no, it's for sure we've got a real close affinity with the Impression 434, and now to see the 43 come online, it's exciting, and it's exciting for us seeing how the boat's being received now, and fingers crossed it's a huge success, and it certainly seems to have gone off on that path at the moment. So it's exciting.
I'm looking forward to getting on the water and testing it.
For sure.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
All right, so starting at the transom, you can see we've got this really big, wide bathing platform, which is nice and low down to the water. This is actually an option, and the standard boat has a slightly smaller bathing platform at the level of the cockpit sole. So you'd have to select this option, but you can see there's a really good purchase here, nicely hidden there. So already seeing some nice sort of finishing touches to this boat before we've even stepped on board. There's a bathing ladder that clips on here, not there at the moment. And then we come up between these two aft lockers into the cockpit. Now these aft lockers as standard are just open stowage, just plain stowage, but this boat rather nicely has cool box so that you've got cold drinks on deck, clearly very important in the Mediterranean. And then on this side, so here's the deck grill. This is designed to be used from the transom. There you go, so that is a gas powered grill. Nice for barbecuing on deck. Between the helm stations we have this large locker here, lazarette, and that's big enough for your life raft or a dinghy and an outboard, folded up dinghy of course, something along those lines. So moving to the helm stations, this is a twin wheel, twin rudder boat, and you can see here the rudder head, which you'd need to remove if you wanted emergency steering. But you've got these composite wheels, not sure if they're carbon or GRP painted black. Now you've got really nice consoles here, autopilot, foghorn, chain counter, B&G instruments. Rather neatly, a B&G instrument on the outboard side, so that when the boat's heeling, you can still see it. So here's my shadow. And then you've also got engine controls here and a rope bin. Now this boat has just the basic spec layout in terms of keeping all of the lines at the forward end of the cockpit, but you can see here that you can have lines and sheets led aft. That is if you opt for the overlapping genoa. This boat is fitted out for the self-tacking jib. Rather nice little touch. You've got these cockpit seats here, so you can sit in the push bit at the stern and watch the world go by as everyone else gets on with things. Gin and tonic, please. The helm station is repeated on port side, again with your rope bins, drainage well drained in there, and also your shore power connection. Coming forwards, you've got a really nice, secure cockpit. And quite unusually, you'll see that the coamings are really high at the forward end, and they drop down aft, which is really nice for lounging, nice backrest and comfortable, but it's going to help you feel more secure, particularly if you've got children or family in the boat. That's going to be really nice. And then because it's a really wide cockpit, you've got this twin cockpit table system. You can make the whole thing into one big table. And there's a leaf that comes up on this side, but you'll also notice here rather neatly that the table leaf can slide down the table leg, and the same on the other side, and it turns this into a nice sun pad for sunbathing. And it's also really good for bracing and keeping you nice and secure. At the forward end of the cockpit, you've got these Harken 46 winches with your bank of clutches, and there's one either side, and all lines are led aft from the mast through these tunnels on the coach roof. Before we go down below, let's have a look up on deck. Some nice little drink storage there. Oh, cockpit lockers. So you've got a hull depth cockpit locker in there. Sorry, the cushion's just getting in the way. And then there's another cockpit locker on port side. Right, coming up on deck, a little bit of a step up, but you can come around the wheel nicely. That is a little track for off-wind sails, little sheeting position. And then coming forwards, you can see we've got these really nice wide side decks, chain plates. That's a really good solid deck gear here. You can see that's a massive solid stainless steel mooring cleat. Chain plates are outboard to keep the side decks completely clear. You can see, I don't know if you can see the moulding here. That's where the track would go if you do opt for an overlapping genoa. If you don't, you get a self-tacking jib track here just forward of the mast. Let's move forwards, and then you can see the coach roof as we come back. Coming forwards, we've got two lockers here, and they're really good. There's a sail and fender locker, which is huge, and then there's also an anchor locker, which I'll show to you now. Don't know if you can see in there. Let's move this. Right, you can see you've got a grating in there, which is to keep the chain out of seawater at the bottom, which is a nice little touch. The chain will touch against the aft bulkhead here, but you've got a decent drop going all the way down, not quite hull depth, but a good long way down. So you've got a good drop to keep the anchor running smoothly. And then forward, we've got a bow roller for the anchor, if you can see that against the black floor. There is an option for a bowsprit, which you would need if you want to set a code 0 or off-wind sails, but this boat hasn't had that fitted. Right, so you can see here we have an absolutely cavernous locker that is hull depth, hence the ladder going down into it. You have got this little bar that you can tie off your fenders to so you don't lose them and have to scramble in after them. But you could easily put in 2 or 3 spinnakers, probably a dozen or so fenders, and still have space in there. I reckon it's huge. Now, it's always a little bit odd to see a sailing boat without a mast, but we're in a hall in the middle of Dusseldorf in the middle of winter. So no mast here. You can see there's the mast foot. and just after this, they kind of call it a hidden deck saloon. It's not quite a deck saloon, but you do get better visibility than a standard sort of deep saloon boat. And you've got these two nice forward-facing windows which have a slight incline, so you can just about see forwards in the coach roof here. And then you've got multiple opening hatches. You've got one, and these are all flush mounted, so they're nice and smooth on the deck. And you've got 5 of those in the saloon alone, and then there's 2 more for the aft cabins. Clearly you can see the rail around here where you're going to mount a spray hood, and I'd imagine most people will have one of those on board. Heading below now, we come to the companionway, and you can see that this is a really big companionway, so they've pushed the hatch nice and far forwards, and then you've got 4 steps down into the saloon. Plain wood with grippy strips on, which is nice, and you've got 4 steps. And here we are in the saloon, and this is where it really hits you that they've done some real design work to update the boat. Now, this might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's quite unusual, and I think I really like it. So this is in rustic knotted oak, and the interior has actually been styled by design house Pininfarina. So it's got some big name credentials behind it, but let's have a look at the details and you can see what you think. As you come down the steps, you've got some nice grab rails there. Obviously the hatch above you as well. Head height is huge in here. I'm 185, I've got at least 20 centimeters above my head, so 2 meters headroom. And then you've got grab rails all the way along the deck head on both sides, which makes it a lot more seaworthy in a seaway. For shorter people, children may be lacking a couple of handholds, but that's nothing that you couldn't rectify. So first of all, you've got the saloon here, which is a really big C-shaped seating around a single solid saloon table to starboard. Now, this hasn't got telescopic legs, but you can lift the table up, take the legs out and put that down and turn it into a big lounging area. I'm sure you could probably spec that up to one that does it electrically if that's something you're into. Just after that, we've got 4 lockers here. Don't know if you can see in there, it's a little bit dark, sorry. But you've got some really big storage space there. And the same down below, some really good storage. Now this is optional, or sorry, this is standard. You can opt for a chart table here. It would be an aft facing chart table. Over on port side, you've got a longitudinal galley. So here we've got 3 burner gas stove. We've got a double sink. Goes in there. We've got a fridge, pantry. I guess you could turn that into a freezer. And you've also got a full-size front opening fridge. And importantly, that faces fore and aft. So if you're heeling over and you open it, everything doesn't fall out. So they've clearly thought of that. Loads of stowage under there, a small bin, more stowage in here. So as you'd expect on a 43-foot boat, there's loads of stowage. There's your cutlery drawer. So a pretty sensible galley. It has got a crash bar on the oven. Because you haven't got anything to brace against behind you, you'd want a bum strap here if you're heeling over on starboard tack. This boat doesn't have, but I guess could have, a bench or a seat in the middle. It would take up some of this nice open space, but it might make it a little bit more seaworthy if you're in a blow. Might not be too fussed if you're Mediterranean port hopping. Above the galley, you've got these top opening hatches. Really nice to see top opening hatches because you can open it, and if things are sliding around a bit, they're not going to fall out and you can see what's going on before they do. So you've got loads of space in here. Pininfarina have tried to style sort of quite hard, aggressive, not aggressive, but modern lines to counteract the sort of the cottage, soft, knotted oak feel. And actually the grey lines work really well against the sort of soft swirls of the grain. I'm a big fan. Under the seats to starboard, outboard you have a water tank. I can go through the stats later, but you've got a water tank there, and then you've got stowage under the seats here, and rather nicely, if I could open them, you've got some drawers there so that you can make it a bit easier to access that, particularly if people are sitting there. So this boat has been fitted out in the 4-cabin version, and the extra cabin is squeezed in up forwards. And as you come forwards, here's the mast support, nice stainless tube, and it's actually on starboard, and you get this snug little bunk cabin, sorry. So if you've got kids on board, this would be a really good option. And actually with the double cabin just ahead of it, it gives you a nice sort of little family end to the boat, and you can stick guests down the other end. You've got stowage in here. You've got a stowage bin in here. So it's limited stowage, but actually, if you've got children, this would be a really fun little space for them. And then you've got a hatch up here for a little bit of ventilation too. And again, you've got the oak lining the hull sides throughout. So it feels really good. Right, going forwards, we come into the double berth in the 4-cabin. You've got some nice little touches like these leather retraining straps to stop doors slamming back when you're underway. And in here, we've got a double berth, if we can see that, and it's up against the port side with a little bit of stowage down on starboard side and some shelves around the bed. And you've got some little bins under there. There's stowage further forward under the bed, sorry, tankage under the bed, but you have got some nice little drawers and cupboards, lockers under there, bins. So this boat is really well sorted for stowage. This boat, this cabin here is squeezed in. This is the head of the bunk cabin. The other option is in the 3-cabin layout, you don't get the bunk cabin, but effectively you would have an island berth with access to both sides of it, stowage on either side as well, and then you would have a separate heads and shower compartment. As it is, we have a single shower heads compartment on to port, just outside here. So here we go, you've got a grating there for a shower head comes off, heads toilet there, and then you've got some locker space, and there's a holding tank behind there, mirror above the sink. So that's a really nice space. This isn't the main heads, we'll have a look at them aft in just a second. Moving aft then, we've got this heads compartment to port, and here we go. So you've got the toilet seat aft, it's facing fore and aft, which is always good. So you can go to the toilet equally on both tacks, very important. And then on this side, so at the forward end, you've got a separate shower stall with a little, you can see here, you've got a little perspex door to close that off. You've got a big window here, but with a blind that comes down on poppers. And then you've got ventilation up here. Locker space is bottom opening in there, and then equally in there, there's some nice locker space. It's all very nicely finished, all quite stylish. So they've managed to sort of elevate the production quality and just the sort of the moving into a niche that's above just a basic production boat, if not a fully custom bespoke boat. So just trying to move the luxury up a notch or two. Right, and then you've got the 2 aft cabins which mirror each other and are standard. So here they're big square berths that make the most of the wide beam, the full beam that's carried all the way aft. You've got stowage bins there which also make a seat for changing, which is quite nice, and you've got some locker space here. So option for hanging space or shelves. You've got a big shelf on this side and the hull window there. Locker does sort of, sorry, the shelf actually slightly impinges on the bed space underneath, but it does give you a bit more stowage. And then here you've got various access panels to machinery spaces. I'll have to come back to that one. And so in there you've got access to the engine. Sorry, it's all a bit dark. See if we can give you a bit more light. No. So you've got access to the engine. We'll look at the engine in a moment. And then this one, I figured out how to do it. There, you've got space in here for not to be able to see. You've got space in there for a gen set and some of the ducting and things. And then access in the transom to power systems and to steering quadrants. Ventilation wise, you've got one opening hatch here just above the bunk, and then you've got another one in the coach roof above you. Moving over to starboard, absolutely identical, same layout, double cabin. So you've got the washboard stowage here, which is just a single piece washboard. You've got the same knotted oak throughout, but you've got two fixed windows and 2 opening hatches as well. So your guests, if this is where you choose to put them, will be very comfortable indeed. Engine access is under the companionway steps on a gas strut. That comes up pretty high. And then in here, I don't know if it's bright enough. I'll see if I can get you a bit more light. In here you have a Yanmar 57, which is an option. The basic motor is a 40 horsepower. This is just shy of 60 horsepower. There's also an option for an 80 horsepower if you want it. Here in the saloon, I'm just going to have a look in the bilges, and this is slightly unusual. So you can see here that we've got really deep bilges. That's a deep bilge sump there and the bilge pump going down there. The 4 little holes you can see in the bottom are where the keel bolts will go when she's not at the boat show. And this is partly a function of the fact that the floor is slightly raised to give you a better view, give you better stowage, but it's also that the boat's got quite a deep rocker, a curve fore and aft along the hull, which means that she's a bit more sea-kindly, a bit more of a cruising boat, and also you've got lots more stowage space under the cabin sole. So that's the new Elan Impression 43. I hope you've enjoyed having a look around. I must say I'm pretty impressed. Elan have certainly managed to raise this a notch above your average cruising boat, and whether she's going for charter or private ownership, I think she looks like a really good boat. She looks like a seaworthy boat. There's a couple of things with handholds that I'd like to improve, but otherwise I think she looks really good. Just to run through a couple of stats, she's 43 foot 8 inches, so 13.3 meters long. And another foot longer if you add the bowsprit on to that. She's got, tankage wise, she's got 290 litres of fuel and 270 litres of water, but you can increase that to 470 litres of water if you want to. Now, price is 300,000 euros excluding VAT, that's base price from the yard. For a basic sail away package, so with sails and ready to go, but a basic spec, is about 325,000 excluding VAT. So add on your options list and your tax and you're looking a little bit more than that. But I have to say, I really like this boat.